Andrew Lejeune with your Asian Racing Review, joined as always by Michael Cox, the editor of AsianRacingReport.com. And plenty to talk about today, Michael. Coming a big weekend in Hong Kong. Sharkey was Champions Day. It was a good day for the locals. Talking about Zach Purton, more freedom possibly for next year. Damien Lame's absolutely flying in Japan. And we're talking about affordability checks in the UK as well. So plenty to get through over the next 15 minutes or so. Let's start off with Zach. He's staying at least for one more year.
Yeah, Zach Purton ended the speculation this week by announcing he was good enough to wait until after Hong Kong's big day to do it, just to not take the gloss and take the publicity away from Champions Day. But Zach Purton will stay for another season, and it looks like he has been given a lot more freedom to be able to travel, take meetings off in Hong Kong, maybe take little sections of the season off. A lot more freedom to be able to take rides overseas. And look, there's a lot to come out of this that we can break out. But first of all, great news for racing fans in general. I think for Hong Kong, I think great news for the Hong Kong Jockey Club. It's not just a benefit to Zach to be able to go down to Australia and take rides there, and to be able to head potentially to places that he hasn't been able to go so much in the past, like Europe, Japan. He's talked about a Japan Cup. So, but it's also great news for the Hong Kong Jockey Club as well. It's every time Zach goes overseas, he's representing Hong Kong. He's known as a Hong Kong rider. He's soon to be a 6-time champion rider. He'll spend a month in Japan this summer. He intends to apply. What I'm interested in, though, is to see that this opening up for Hong Kong and these options, could it increase the quality of the Hong Kong Jockey Club roster? Like Ryan Moore, for instance, as someone that 5 years ago would come for 5-6 years ago come for an off-season for a mid-season stint. Could he be lured back with that attraction of being able to come and go a little bit more, fulfill some of his obligations for the big stables in Europe? Let's see.
Yeah, well, if not Ryan, then certainly others. I think it certainly opens that up with, if Zach is allowed this freedom. It's something we've spoken about on the website in the past. You've only got so long left competitively to ride, then you want to spread your wings and try and be at some of these big worldwide meetings that he hasn't had a chance to ride at yet.
And it's not just about the money.
No.
It's about the prestige and ticking boxes. Zach desperately wants to win that Melbourne Cup. When he retires, I think he's got enough money to retire comfortably. It's about what's on that resume and what he looks back on and what he was able to achieve. And speaking to Joe Moreira in an interview that we have coming out soon for the Asian Racing Report podcast, he talks about why he's back riding in Brazil.
Yeah.
Why would he go back to Brazil and ride in races that are worth? He's riding. Moreira's back in Brazil riding in Group 1 races worth a Saturday race in Sydney is worth at the moment, around 150,000 Australian dollars, but he's never won those races. He wants his name on the board on those trophies. So, I think it's great for Zach. Obviously, it's great for fans, but it's great for the Hong Kong Jockey Club and it's great for world racing.
Yeah, and certainly the high pressure environment he's used to riding in. Should he have to rely and wait for a suspension to take a weekend away with the family?
The fact is, there's a lot more longevity to the riders. Like Zach talked about this week, Australian racing being a grind, but the fact is, in other jurisdictions, they might ride more often and more days, but they don't have to ride hurt as often. I'm convinced that this wear and tear on Moreira and Purton is because they've been at such competitive push. Zach against Douglas before him. If they're hurt and they take a week off, or they try to take 2 weeks off to let an injury heal, somebody's going to come in and take their rides. Yeah, and I think they've just really been at the grind in Hong Kong for a long time. At the very least, if it doesn't prolong Zach's career physically, and he says he's feeling better physically, of course he was always citing injuries as the reason he would possibly retire soon, and saying, I've only got 2 years left. Last year he told us that he had 2 years left or 18 months left. Physically he's feeling better. At the very least, being able to take short breaks, being able to ride in different environments is going to refresh him mentally.
Of course, he was on board Lucky Sweynesse, who was brilliant in the sprint on the weekend, absolutely bolted up. That's one reason to keep riding as well. But what's next for Hong Kong's champions? Lucky Sweynesse, Golden 60, winning his third. Brilliant in the Champions Marlin. Romantic Warrior, back to his best. after apparently being under the weather for his last start.
Well, let's start with that because we've got a couple of interesting pieces on the site this week on AsianRacingReport.com. The first one from David Morgan today, and a comment piece there, which I think is incredibly valid. After this weekend's win, Romantic Warrior, all credit to him. Great performance, back to his best, 2,000 metres. We saw the same sort of form that we saw in December when he won the Hong Kong Cup. After the race, Danny Shum was quite surprising when he revealed that before the horse's previous start in the Hong Kong Gold Cup, that the horse had been suffering a fever in the lead up to that race, and that he was in fact incredibly worried about him before he went out, started $1.50 and was beaten by Golden 60. Now that's fine, but that's not what he said before that race. And it was the first time it was the first time it had been reported publicly. And look, I just think it was a really bad look. The vet knew. The vets in Hong Kong, for those who don't know, the Hong Kong Jockey Club, they're Hong Kong Jockey Club appointed vets. This isn't an in-house situation where the trainer employs the vet. Hong Kong Jockey Club they pride themselves on a high degree of transparency for punters so that people can bet with confidence. And you don't require, this is a high level race, a Group 1 race, one of Hong Kong's 2 highest rated horses going head to head. And the horse that's $1.50 favourite misses a gallop because of a fever. And the quotes before the race are saying the horse is fine. So, look, I think it needs to be looked at. If you've got in-house media teams covering the horses, trying to collect quotes from different connections and stables in the lead up to the race to check in with the horses' welfare and their well-being, and we've got trainers basically fobbing off. If we look at Danny's quotes before the Gold Cup, it's the horse is fine. Well, clearly he wasn't. And I just think it's a situation we don't need to be putting the media in. We don't need to be putting the trainer in, given that the Hong Kong Jockey Club vets themselves are the ones looking at these horses. If there is a problem like that in future, in a race of such high profile, when the stakes are so high, personally, I'd rather the public know about it.
Yeah, absolutely. But moving, I don't want to just sort of leave that and move on from it, but we do need to right now. They've got big plans for him possibly towards the end of the season.
Yeah, really interesting. He'll go to the Champions in Chater Cup, 2,400 metres next start in Hong Kong. But then next Hong Kong season in October, Danny Shum announced after the race that he would go to the Tenno Show Autumn. That sets up a potential clash with Japanese superstar Equinox, 2,000 metres at Tokyo. Wow, what a race. I've been saying for a while now, I've written a few pieces like, come on, and spoken on here about, let's get these Hong Kong superstars overseas. They're dominating at home. And then when Danny said, okay, Tenno Show Autumn, I was like, well, whoa, calm down. Man.
One step at a time.
Just don't do that. Yeah. If you're going to go overseas, go somewhere where you're likely to win is what I would encourage him to do. Let's start easy. Maybe Qatar, Australia, even weaker. 2,000 metre race. Is Animo still racing?
No.
I'm not sure. We could find another horse to beat up on other than Equinox. My goodness.
Yeah. But again, hats off to them.
Yeah, great.
And that's what you say. And a Golden 60, possibly in Japan as well. That's still up in the air at this stage. And Lucky Sweynesse, maybe Australia?
Yeah, it looks like it. So Golden 60 to start with, the horse that we'd all love to see go overseas. If he goes to a Yasuda Kenin, which is in a month from now, I thought had a close eye on him after the race. Of course, I'm here in Australia, not there in person, but he's a horse that's known to have a slow recovery post-race. He looked better than usual, I have to say. He looked alert, ears pricked and comfortable. Let's hope he goes to Japan. The mile ranks there look a little bit weak. I think he would start a short price favourite. He's got to go. The owner, Stanley Chan, will meet with Francis Loy, the trainer, and jockey Vincent Ho this week, and they will make a decision. Lucky Sweynesse, I'm hearing more likely to skip the Yasuda Kenin where he has made an early entry. And look, slot offer on the table for Lucky Sweynesse. And it's just up to the owners now. For a horse that's come into around $6 in Everest betting pre-post, I think that might be a bit of a sign that a deal is imminent for Lucky Sweynesse, who has just put together a great season.
Incredible, sweeping the speed series. He's got the world at his feet. Golden 60. Comment rather than question. Surely it's this year or never. This is going to be his last season.
Oh, it has to be. It'd be sad to see him go when he's past
Yeah.
his best, and he seems to be within a peak period for him. So, yeah, let's hope so.
Now, speaking of Japan, Damian Lane. He's absolutely flying. Seems to be breaking records on records. 7 more winners last weekend.
Yeah, not just seven from 14.
Yeah.
And just this incredible strike rate he has. And he's doing it like, his strike rate this stint is just incredible. 38% win, 60% top 3. He's already the highest percentage for a jockey of his tenure of all time. 127 wins at 24%. He's absolutely killing it right now. A couple of big race rides coming up as well, including the White Wonder, the Unicorn, Sadashi in the Group 1 Victoria Mile. We'll be lucky enough to have a couple of our reporters there for that race. So exciting. Yeah, there she is, Sadashi. And, I just think, we keep talking about Damian Lane and like, should he be in the world's best jockey conversation? He is just going to another level there in Japan. I think it's significant. He had such a great reputation there previously. He's won on these horses in Saudi Arabia, in Dubai, in Hong Kong, in Australia. He must be he's maybe in the eyes of the Japanese connections, the number 1 foreign rider right now, the most in demand. Great to see for a really humble, hardworking guy.
Yeah, and it's a very different situation between him and Zach, but he does seem to be having the best of both worlds at the moment in having these short stints flying in and flying out, but still having Australia and the potential to travel with these Japanese horses overseas as well.
Yeah, and credit to him too, because Damian has to sacrifice a lot to go to Japan. It's a risk. He gives up rides to, in Melbourne, he gives up Group 1 rides to be able to go to Japan. There's no guarantee of success there. There's no guarantee of support. Completely foreign environment, like as foreign as it gets. Because a lot of jockeys go there and don't succeed. A lot of credit goes to Damian's translator there and representative Adam Harrigan, who's well connected in a lot of stables and continues to grow his influence there with Damian as well. It's maybe even a bigger month coming up with these feature races. Group 1's coming soon.
All right, we'll leave Japan and one eye on the UK at the moment. And the UK government there has a 268-page white paper, which is outlining potential reforms to gambling restrictions. This will be taking place still. It's not in place as yet. It's going to take place over the next year, and the consultancy progress is in progress as well. But what are the implications for the UK betting public and potentially more far-reaching as well?
Well, I think it's bad news for racing, and why it matters here more so is what I'm interested in. I think we're not seeing much about it in the Australian press, and more alarmingly, we're not hearing about affordability checks in terms of we're hearing about affordability checks from politicians. There's a recent inquiry into online gambling, which we've had some stories about on AsianRacingReport.com, and we've discussed here on Asian Racing Review. What's come up out of those discussions, and we all enjoyed the bookmakers' representatives being made to squirm on the stand and ask questions about cutting off winning punters and their policies around that. But what was coming soon after was what we're seeing in the UK, affordability checks, which means that if you lose or potentially gamble a certain amount in a year, in the UK, it's if you gamble certain amounts, you'll be subject to, that will trigger certain checks from the bookmakers themselves. If you gamble another amount, that could even deeper checks from government. It's raised questions about, encroachments on civil liberties and privacy, and rightly so. And what I'm worried about in Australia is that's what's being proposed by government ministers and anti-gambling groups. Now, I believe that gambling advertising has probably gone too far in this country, and I'm not here to say that it should be a free-for-all, but what I'm concerned about is the lack of representation from racing's leaders when it comes to these arguments. These sort of affordability checks need to be pushed back on. They'd be absolutely disastrous for racing. They'd be counterproductive to government. And I'll tell you who they'd be great news for: illegal bookmakers and illegal gambling bodies. Because the more you put your squeeze on these things, the higher the taxes are, the more regulation equals higher taxes. It means customers pushed out into other forms of gambling and to potentially illegal or unregulated areas. So, I just feel like horse racing seems to have just handed over control of its decision making to corporate bookmakers, it seems. I don't think it's good enough to just promise, when it comes to Racing New South Wales or Racing Victoria, to promise prize money and we will give you prize money to the participants. Well, I'll tell you what, if these affordability checks are too strict, then there's no customers and the turnover goes down, there won't be any prize money to promise, there won't be funding at all. So, I'd like to see more advocacy for racing. It shouldn't be up to me or any other punting groups. It's about the existence of the racing industry itself is what's at stake.
All right. You mentioned prize money there. It's something I meant to talk about earlier on as well when we were talking about Champions Day. They've actually had an injection of funds again for next season. It's up 7 million across the 3 races. It's something Chief Executive Officer Winfried Engelbert-Bresco has been talking about during the week, about attracting more runners from Europe as well. Will this prize money, do you think it will pique the interest of some of the European, the bigger stables maybe? Because that's what they need.
Well, I'm interested in what you think as well, but look, I don't think that's what motivates the big stables in Europe and Britain. I still think there's an old school mentality, an establishment mentality that a race like this weekend's 2,000 guineas. I don't even know if the prize money covers the entry fees. Is it? I don't even know what it's worth, but it's not attracting sort of overseas interest. But that race is worth more. They would think that this is a pinnacle. This is a. I'm not saying that tradition shouldn't be respected in that way, but I'm not sure what it's going to take to shake the mentality that that Europeans' very best horses shouldn't come to Asia to compete and prove their worth. Like, look, I think it does say a lot about a horse's ability, about their temperament, about their durability to be able to get on a plane and go over and compete at their best on foreign shores. And I think it will take more than money. I think it's going to take, as I've written this week, as I've spoken about elsewhere, that it might take the Hong Kong horses and like the Japanese horses going overseas, eventually, if Equinox goes to Dubai, and like he's not toweling up the very best from Europe, but if they can go into Royal Ascot and the big carnivals, go to the Arc and prove they're the best, maybe one day it does turn around where horses to prove their worth come to Asia to do so and add to their resume. Yeah. What do you think? Like,
I think Aidan O'Brien has always been actually a really good supporter of Hong Kong racing, particularly around the international time. It was, sends a good team over, a strong team, has walked away with plenty of prize money and silverware as well. I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but I do remember him saying something along the lines of similar to what you were saying, is he sees it, part of his job is to test the thoroughbred, because that improves the breed in terms of how far they're racing, the situation, like when he goes to the Breeders' Cup, is trying to win the Breeders' Cup Classic, those sort of things. So travelling, as you mentioned, does test the breed and ultimately improves the breed as well. But it is a shift in mentality as much as hopefully the prize money does help. But I do think that needs to be some groundwork done as well in terms of not just the Cool Moors and the Godolphins as well, but a lot of these major European stables to get them back and get them on board. Particularly, maybe it's a funny time of year for them as well, just starting off in the season. You mentioned the Classics coming up. We've got Royal Ascot's not too far away, so there might be some other factors at play. But they're sort of throwing the prize money itself won't be an excuse for not turning up anyway.
Yeah, I don't think that it's a significant increase in prize money, but not enough. I think increase in volume, increase in numbers, increase in quality. I think we'll see some quantity, but not that top end quality. I don't think is going to change much at all.
All right. Okay. We mentioned plenty of good racing coming up over the next few weeks. The classic season kicking off in the UK as well. What are we looking at on the website?
We'll have some stuff on the Kentucky Derby coming up, and take a look there. Great piece from David Morgan on the Danny Shum situation. What was said before the race, what was in terms of before the Gold Cup, and what was said after the QE2 Cup, and just some look at that. And plenty more coming up on AsianRacingReport.com.
All right, and a reminder as well, as far as the World Pool is concerned, getting in a busy time of year as well. And this weekend is the 2,000 guineas from Newmarket, so we're tuning into that as well. That's just about it for this week, though. So like and subscribe, keep following us all the major social channels as well. Thanks as always, Michael, and keep tuning in for more from Asian Racing Review.